Dr. Diti Joshi here from Ardexia, and I am talking about that the lawsuits are here. This shouldn't surprise everybody, but I have been watching this really carefully, and anyone who's been following or reading what I write probably knows that I write about it. The FTC, for example, recently sued Hims and Hers. They allege that the company shared 2.5 million subscribers' sensitive health data with Meta and Snap via pixel tracking, despite marketing themselves as private and discreet. They charged customers before those customers ever had a doctor consultation, and then they hid the cancel button. So it's 3 separate categories of problems in one complaint. And we're going to go through what is actually happening, and I want to tell you, I am not actually attacking any of these companies in specifically because there are a lot of things going on that are making this happen. So what's actually happening right now? This is not one bad actor. It's generally a pattern because we haven't had really great regulation in how that we had an uptake in telehealth. And people seem to forget that you have to think through what is fraud and how do you treat it. The HHS, for example, referred him to the DOJ separately in February for GLP-1 compounding practices. Novo Nordisk is also suing them over compounded semaglutide. The FDA sent warning letters to more than 30 telehealth companies earlier this year over GLP marketing violations. Not about the medications themselves, but about what the companies were claiming the medications could do. Then there's another company called Zelti. The FTC and DOJ moved to seize it because it's rude. The complaint says the company used a medical director's credential. Medical director's credentials were used to submit prior authorizations without that director's knowledge. The medical director filed a whistleblower complaint, which is not a compliance failure. It is a fraudulent. It's fraudulent and it's considered a failure. And there's a number of other companies, GoodRx, BetterHelp, NextMed. They're all facing enforcement in prior years for the same patterns. Data sharing without disclosure, deceptive billing, fake reviews, poor marketing. So all of these things have been building for a while. And so when I think about it, it's not funny actually, but I will say in my book, Telehealth Success, I wrote about how malpractice risk in telehealth has historically been low. Virtual care tends to involve lower acuity cases. There's appropriate escalation and documentation that follows a visit. I know for every single program that I ran, we actually were using it and being very careful in using it rather than just using it for everything. But I'm going to say this, fraud is a different category entirely. And fraud prevention was always going to be a necessary part of scaling this industry. I've served and have been an expert witness in telehealth cases. And so most of the time it was initially for malpractice, and I saw very little of that. So I stand by the fact that malpractice cases are still low. But what I'm seeing in these enforcement actions is not surprising because it's actually because of fraud and compliance. These patterns that end up in litigation were visible long before anyone filed a complaint. The business models that drove DTC telehealth boom, subscription billing, frictionless prescribing, data monetization, were always going to draw regulatory attention. It was never if, it was when. And now that telehealth's been there long enough and it has gotten the attention of all of these federal agencies, the time is now. A couple weeks ago, I posted about the JAMA Secret Shopper study, which documented prescriptions that were issued in under 5 minutes and clinician denials overturned after refund requests, and medications auto-shipped without patient confirmation. The regulators are reading the same studies we are. They are seeing the same posts we are. They are looking at the same types of companies that we are. So what the academic literature is documenting and what the enforcement actions are responding to are the exact same thing, just described in 2 different languages. What the real cost is, and I've been saying this, is that this is not going to be random enforcement. They're actually looking at a couple of different things. It's how we're marketing medicine and healthcare to people. Now with the use of social media, and the ability to reach almost anybody, we're able to actually share healthcare and information to anybody. The other thing is that there are privacy issues. A lot of the companies that are here, granted, I don't think they actually meant for privacy or non-private things to be shared. But when you have a website that is HIPAA compliant, but the actual landing page for a patient is separate, the landing page and the information there is not actually under HIPAA. And so that probably is where that data is being shared and sold and is where these companies are getting in trouble. There are companies that are operating carefully. They're using real clinical infrastructure. They are trying to do right by patients. They're giving the right information. They're trying to do their best. But they're all going to be facing collateral damage because regulators are going to look and scrutinize everybody. The public cannot easily distinguish them from the ones that did not do these things. Okay, and I will say I'm an expert in telemedicine. I've been in this in a long time, and even I, unless I really go under the hood and take a look at these companies, it's hard for me to really tell what's going on either. So this is what is interesting about this distribution versus care problem. We're having a lot of distribution, but we're not always giving the best care. And when innovation is the business model only, rather than a clinical model, this is where it's going to end up. So in closing, I'll say regulation is always required here. I want to see it. I am happy for anybody out there who needs an expert witness to talk about what is required. How do we prevent fraud, either on the side of the companies who want to avoid it or those who are working on these cases? I am here because I think it's an important discussion to have. You cannot remove clinical guardrails in the name of access when the actual driver is a subscription revenue model. I know that makes me very unpopular with some of these people and companies out here that are building on this particular model. But, well, I was unpopular when I tried to get telehealth to work, so it's nothing new for me. But in short, this what frustrates me the most, and I say this, is that telehealth was meant to increase access. It was meant to help a lot of people. It was meant so that we could get better healthcare and more healthcare and specialist care to more people. But right now, we're not actually using it for that. And I hope that one day we get back to it. So, always interested to hear what people are thinking about all of these regulations. See you all next time. Bye-bye.